Hello, everybody. Welcome to Couple Nurses Podcast, where we tackle current health news and hot nursing topics, one conversation at a time. Hope you guys are having a great day. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, tune in every Friday, check out new episodes. We're doing COVID specials once a week, updating you around the world, see how things are doing. And we have Matt here. Matt's my co-host, and we have a wonderful guest today. Her name is Tasha Triana. Tasha is a Southern California native, a world traveler, registered nurse of 6 years, and certified yoga and meditation instructor. Tasha founded a Nurtured Nurse as a way to inspire others to engage in their own self-care and wellness. She is the owner of the nurturednurse.co. Feel free to check her out. She's got a website, I believe it's called Nurtured Nurse. Is that what the Instagram is?
Yep, the Nurtured Nurse. Yeah,
okay.
At the Nurtured Nurse.
Yeah. So how you doing today, guys? How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing fairly well. Slept 5 hours. My eyes are a little glittery. Had some coffee and I'm ready to roll. So I'm super pumped. And we have an awesome guest. And as you guys know, I'm a little bit of an empath. I like to talk about mindfulness, and I feel like we have a right person for that. So Tasha, how you doing today?
Hey guys, I'm doing good. Thank you. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Super grateful to have this conversation with you. Deep dive on all things nursing, mindfulness, meditation, COVID, wherever we go, right?
Exactly. And you just came from Central America or some part of the country. So tell us a little about your international travel and what you maybe gained from the experience and like your plans.
Yeah. Okay. Gosh, where to begin? I feel like in these current times, things are fast changing and we kind of have to flow with things and adapt. So I'm currently reporting from San Francisco, and that's where I was living the last 2 years. Sorry if it's kind of loud on my end. There's some construction that just started conveniently.
Okay.
But I was living in San Francisco the last 2 years. And then at the end of February, I decided, or that's when I moved to Nicaragua. I moved to an island in the Caribbean side of Nicaragua where I was going to be managing a yoga and massage and meditation spot there. And so I was just settling in, and everything kind of erupted with the current situation with COVID. And it kind of went quickly from, oh, you're trapped in paradise to, yeah, you actually might get trapped there and everyone is leaving the island. So it's best to just go back to the States. And I felt that that was the wise choice anyway, so that I could be close to friends and family and kind of jump back into help if I needed to go back into the hospital setting.
Yeah, it's a pretty drastic change. You went from being a nurse, right, to trying to open this whole yoga and meditation place in Nicaragua.
Right, exactly. And when I was in San Francisco, I've been working per diem the last, actually probably 4 years. I just hit my 7 years as a nurse, actually. I was just thinking about it. So probably the last 4 years I was working per diem, which was really nice because then I could make my schedule however I wanted. I could work either days, evenings, whatever worked for me and for the hospital. And so the last 2 years in San Francisco, I was really focused on getting meditation teacher certified, yoga teacher certified. As I was developing like my own practice in mindfulness, yoga meditation, I just became super interested in it. And I didn't really envision myself teaching meditation. And that's just kind of like the natural path. It just unfolded that way. So it's pretty cool.
So I have two questions, but we're going to merge it into one somehow. So
Sure.
How did you get into like mindfulness? And because you've been on this path to wanting to be, an instructor, yoga, and opening up your own resort, how did you also take that leap of faith from, let's just say, nursing to, I'm into mindfulness, I became self-aware, I want to start this retreat? Like, where did you connect these dots? And like, what made you really want to kind of pursue this passion where you just kind of adventure out to another country?
Yeah, so interesting. I feel like I'm kind of at that period right now where all of my interests are really combining. I mean, I definitely am like a nerd for life. I'm interested in so many things. And I think it was just kind of allowing myself and letting myself listen to kind of my inner voice as I started tapping away at this and just really following my passions. And so I think I really got onto the path. I don't know. I think your inner calling is already in you. My mom told me a story the other day about when I was a kid and I was like making mantras for people and selling them at my lemonade stand. And I was like, oh, I don't even remember doing that, but it's kind of like in me in some ways. But I think what really kind of got me on the path was just feeling really burnt out in the hospital. And, I hadn't even been a nurse that long. And I think just seeing the effects of, 12-hour shifts and how to manage time at work, away from work, how to recharge, and just really taking a look at that within myself. And that's really what got me kind of on the path of yoga, meditation, things that just help me ground back in. I know, Matt, you mentioned you're a bit of an empath. I would probably guess not a bit, but a big one. And I think all nurses are, to be honest. And I think so much of it is like learning how to cultivate your own energy and really staying grounded in your own alignment so that you don't absorb as much of the energy around you, and much in the hospital, such a mix of energy and with the different patients you work with. So I think that it's an ongoing practice too, but really becoming aware of that has helped me so much.
Yeah. So how do you think, or sorry, my mic. So what are some like advice for somebody that's trying to find like their inner self? Cause you know, in society, we have so much like stimulation, like social media, everybody's telling us what we should like, what we should do, how we should act. How do you kind of break away from that? And how do you kind of just figure out what you actually enjoy doing now, what someone is basically telling you what you enjoy doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think what's really interesting about these times now, and on the positive note, because I'm forever the positive one, but I think that this time now is really causing us to strip away so much and to truly like deep dive within and see what things are really important to us. It's, you know, maybe it's not material possessions that someone thought was super important, because at a time like this, what are those really going to offer you? And so I think this time, hopefully people are using it to not numb out and get distracted, because there still are ways, you know, if you're at home just 24/7 watching Netflix, nothing wrong with watching Netflix, but I think everything in moderation. So for me, what really helped was just having lots of downtime, lots of quiet time, just filling it up with, you know, things that are distractions. I really love journaling, meditating, sometimes even just being in silence. I love being in nature and, you know, going on hikes, but not listening to music, just really being present. And I think those things just help you cultivate more, just like an inner knowing. You get to know yourself more, you see what's important. And I think, you know, getting to know yourself is a lifelong process.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer of like devoting time just like for yourself, just being alone, just having a conversation like in your own head without any kind of other distractions. But I was
Yes.
also, you also mentioned burnout. So how did that feel for you? I know it's going to be a trending topic in the future for sure with all those COVID cases coming
Oh my
along.
gosh,
So
yes.
how did burnout make you feel, and what burnt you out? Was it the job? And so was it the hours? Was it the patients? Was it your coworkers? What made you like burn out?
I think, to be honest, a combination of all of it. And I think one thing that, you know, when you're in nursing school, it's not something, I think the culture is going to shift. I think it's really going to shift in the next few years, especially like you said, with everything going on in the current scenario, but it has to shift. Otherwise the healthcare system won't sustain itself, because if people are getting burnt out after only a couple of years in the field, I mean, then you're spending more time being trained than actually working in a hospital. But I think for me, yeah, it was a bit of everything. The hours are long, especially when you're a new nurse and you're just adjusting to it. There's so much information to take in. I remember when I was a new nurse, I would constantly like look at my schedule before work, like who am I working with? Who's the charge nurse? Just trying to know, you know, like there's so much information to take in. I even remember my first few shifts, and I was, you know, shadowing still a nurse as they're training me to the unit. And she would go in and do all these things and we'd leave and she'd ask me a question and I'm like, wow, like you just did so many things. And I'm like trying to take it all in, you know. And I mean, you grow that muscle of multitasking and observing and everything. But also with 12-hour shifts, I think it's kind of in some ways a work hard, play hard mentality, which can also burn you out because you're on for 12 hours, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 shifts in a row, and then you're off. And so, you know, in your off days, you're doing everything you could, you know, doctors, seeing family, seeing friends, trying to do the things that help you self-care as well. And it's just at the end of that day too, I feel like my off days felt just as full as my days at work. So really learning how to balance that all out as well.
You make a really good point. And me and Peter had this conversation probably a couple of days ago, and we're just like, we need a day off where we're not even hanging out with friends, like just completely to yourself, because at work, we are constantly talking with patients, family, physicians, and we're working as a team, and that's just very energy draining. And you need to kind of resort back to yourself, just like you mentioned, to kind of recharge. And
Mm-hmm.
And have you guys realized at work, like sometimes you could just cut the anxiety with a knife, especially during this time. So for those that are like nurses or maybe anybody that wants to get more into mindfulness, like what are your personal go-to like techniques to like unwind, to have time to yourself? Like what's your routine or that you recommend and teach to people in your like retreats?
Yeah, good question. I think there's so many things. One thing that I feel like has been a big game changer for me. I'm a pretty structured person overall, and I think a lot of nurses especially tend to be. I think most of us are kind of type A in some ways, in a good way. I mean, you need that in the hospital, but I think it can also be a double-edged sword. But I think for me, really cultivating a morning routine. And I'd say the last year or so for me has been, I've always had something, but the last year for me has been really on point with a really solid morning routine. And that just sets me up for the whole day. I feel like that really gets me in my element and then kind of like ready to face whatever the day brings. And also one thing that I really recommend is not checking your phone first thing in the morning, because that moment right when you wake up and then right before bed is when your subconscious is most impressionable. So if you reach out and grab your phone, especially in times like these, and the first thing you're seeing is flashes of news or really dramatic headlines, that's going to go straight in and basically program your day based on fear or anxiety. And so for me, I have kind of my thing that I go through in the morning, and that really helps a lot. So I think morning routines are super important.
Yeah, I'm also a big proponent of morning routines. So before like this whole quarantine stuff happened, like I had a very strict schedule where I would go work out in the morning. So first thing I would do when I would get up, like start with the small things. So like make your bed. That way, like you already achieved like one goal for the most part. Drink some water and then go to the gym. And I would ground myself at the gym, and then I would be at the gym for a couple hours because I would like plan out my whole day at the gym. Like the gym was there kind of like my rock where it would kind of ground me. But I believe everyone should have like at least a solid morning schedule, like at least a few things that you do every morning consistently, because that already sets you up for success.
Exactly. I agree. I like how you said the making the bed. That's definitely in my morning routine. And that's something also, as silly as it sounds, that can be kept consistent no matter where in the world you are. As a traveler, I also like camping, just like being out. And that's something, whether it's like making my bed, making my sleeping bag, whatever it is, that I think that those consistent pieces definitely go a long way.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you know who Jordan Peterson is. He's like a psychologist. He's one of one of the guys I look up to, but he's the one that kind of brought the thought up where like if you look at someone's room, if it's a mess, like imagine how messy their mind is.
Yeah.
So that's like a big thing where if you have a clean room, you have a clean mind, you leave like a clean area, you leave like a blank slate, and then you come into a blank slate and you just come back to sleep with like fresh ideas. And you wake up with good ideas and good intentions.
Yes, I agree 100%. I think that's so true. And the saying, as within, so without. So it's basically like our outer world is a reflection of the inner. So I think that's totally accurate.
So if somebody says, "Oh, my room is messy," is that a red flag, guys?
Yeah,
Are you
red flag.
Okay.
That means I'm not coming over. That's what that means.
Oh, damn, man. I'll make my bed next time. So when it comes to tuning into Tash, right, as you call it,
Yeah.
and you're a huge proponent of meditation daily, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So when is the perfect time to meditate? And maybe some people are completely new into this. Why should you meditate? Why is it such a powerful tool for like mindfulness?
Yeah, good questions. I don't necessarily think there is a oh, okay, I was going to say, I don't really think there's a perfect time to meditate, but I guess I'd maybe rephrase it as like, as long as you do it, that's the perfect time. So like the consistency piece. So it's better to meditate, at random times, as long as you do it, than to have a specific time that's the best. But in terms of science, how I mentioned earlier, in the morning and then in the evening before bed is when your subconscious mind is the most impressionable. Those are the times when, if you want to say the best quote unquote time, those would be the most, I would say, significant times. But for someone who's new in developing a meditation practice, well, there's a lot of pieces, I guess, to that question. But I think, again, back to the consistency and just having downtime. So in the beginning, the consistency piece is the most important. So if someone wants to develop a meditation practice, I would say start with whatever number of minutes will make you successful for 30 days. So if that's in the beginning, 30 seconds, you wake up and you set an alarm for 30 seconds and you're just quiet, you're just tuning in, you listen to a guided meditation, whatever speaks to you. I just say that the consistency piece is the most important. Once you build the consistency, then you can increase the time. And for me personally, meditation has been a huge game changer. I'm an introvert by nature. I feel like I've always been pretty internal. I really like my alone time to recharge and kind of like quiet time. But as you mentioned, in the hospital, there's so much stimulation. In the outside world, there's so much stimulation, and it just allows us to really tune into ourselves, our own energy, our own thoughts, our own feelings, and just really slow down. And it helps us also get out of our fight or flight, our stress response, and into more of the rest and digest, which is really where we should be spending most of our time. However, in today's world, especially in the current times, most of us are living in fight or flight. So it just kind of helps reset our body.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's not necessarily like the time of day or the time you meditate. It's the actual action of actually doing it, because that's the hardest part. The hardest part is getting started and actually completing that whole meditation for like 5 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour. It doesn't really matter. There's no like set goal in time. But
right, exactly.
Yeah. So Matt, show me your profile. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, yeah, I agree. The consistency piece, like sometimes I compare it to, I like to run. And so I compare it sometimes to running, because I think people understand like physical exercise versus like mental exercise a little bit better. So it's like, if I was training for a marathon, I wouldn't just one day run like 12 miles and then that's it. I would want to be like consistently running every day, and then have my day that I do run 10 miles or I do run 12 miles as I'm building up. But it's the consistency piece that's going to make me go farther than, the random days of training.
Right. Yeah. So Matt, show me your profile. It's at the Nurture Nurse. Mm-hmm. And when I think of nurture, I think of like a nice warm safety blanket over my shoulder. So what is the Nurture Nurse? Like, what do you post? What do you do on your page?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, the Nurture Nurse, and basically it kind of came to me organically too, just because at work, when I was working in Southern California at the hospital, I love eating healthy. I love mindfulness tips, like quotes, positivity. And so my coworkers at first, they're like, wow, you always eat so healthy. You're always bringing salad and vegetables and, kind of like questioning me. And then they're like, oh, actually, do you have any recipes? And tell us a quote about this. So I started a wellness board in our nurses lounge at work. And then from there, it just kind of built off. I was like, oh, the Nurtured Nurse, because a lot of us are experiencing burnout and we are nurturers, but usually we're nurturing everyone else but ourselves. And so the Nurtured Nurse to me is, inspiring other nurses, and not just nurses. Everyone needs self-care and wellness. But I think because that's where I was coming from and what led me kind of more on this path. But basically on the Instagram, I post inspirational quotes and just reminders to self-care and just things to kind of make you think about your connection with yourself. I feature other nurses and ask them questions about how they self-care. And it's really created a cool community. In the Bay Area, for example, I would often organize like hikes or yoga classes, meditation, different things like that. So it's been really cool to just have that community piece as well.
And I know like you organize like the whole retreat, right? And that's what you're kind of getting into. And unfortunately you said because of COVID, you had to have your like first retreat canceled. Like, how do you even organize that and all that? I'm just curious, like for myself, honestly. That's why I love podcasting, because I could ask that question if I want to know. So I'm just curious, like how that happened. That's really cool of you, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And I feel like thanks for that reflection, because I feel for me, it's just kind of, I love travel so much and I'm pretty adventurous. I love getting out in the world, and I just like had the idea. And I think if anything, I almost maybe bit off more than I could chew at first. I'm like, oh yeah, perfect. I'll just do this in like 4 months. And I'm like, wait, okay, people take like years to plan one retreat. So I have, really good friends in Central America in El Salvador, and they own an eco lodge place. So I thought it would be great to start with a place where I know the people, and I love Central America. It's been a place of like really, I don't know, just like really life-changing travel for me. And on my mom's side, I'm Guatemalan. So I just really love like the Central American roots. So I contacted my friends. They invited me down there to stay for a week, and I scoped it all out and just had all of these ideas as to what could be done. And for me personally, I love, like recommending things to people, travel related or books, podcasts, everything. But I always like to experience it first. So I thought, let me go down there, scope it out, stay there, see what activities could be done, what it would entail, how the food is, like literally everything. And then I started just kind of piecing together what are the things that I would want. And, I've been on various retreats and seminars, conferences, and kind of like picking and choosing activities that I felt like would be good for anybody, and for helping people cultivate their own self-care practice, their own wellness, shifting their mindset. And I think there's something about travel and getting out of your normal routine and environment that just kind of like restarts a lot of, I don't know, behaviors that sometimes are really set that we don't even realize we're doing.
So what are some of the activities that you like were thinking about planning? Like, is it can be like devoted times for different things? Like, there's gonna be a time for like meditation, a time for playing like water sports, and
Mm-hmm.
how would you like break up the activities and the actual retreat itself?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for asking. Yeah, it was kind of a mix. Since the focus of the retreat is self-care and wellness, I wanted it to be kind of a blend of structure, but also downtime. So the location was right on the beach. There's also a pool. So, kind of a balance of morning yoga, meditation. I also teach breathwork meditation. And so just having those things kind of set in place for people to, wake up in the morning and have a little bit of a routine. And then one day was going to be like a little travel, like escape from where we would be staying, I guess. And so like a little bit of adventure, hiking, nature, exploring the culture and community, because I always think that's important as well, to kind of see where you're going, not just be, at a place and not really understand the people. At least for me, that's really important. So to integrate that as well. And during the downtime, people would have the option to just like be on a beach, be in a hammock, talk with others, have alone time, and then also include self-care workshops. So to teach people kind of what we mentioned before, like what are the things that make people thrive, because maybe for me it's, running and hiking, and for you it's swimming and going to the gym, and, really tapping into what those things are and then how to integrate them. I think, the first step is knowing what they are. And the second part is how do you actually make it part of your life and keep it? So kind of a variety of things.
Do you have any plans for like a future retreat?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely something that I really want to do, and I feel really excited and passionate about it. I think that with the whole COVID scenario and situation, I realized, a lot of people had huge life changes and plan interruptions, trip interruptions. And I'm just really trusting that, the timing will all be perfect when it works out eventually. So I don't know yet when it is, but I know it will be in the future.
It's interesting what could happen to the human body from both a standpoint where you're taking somebody from fight or flight, just like you mentioned, into
Mhm.
like the parasympathetic nervous system, on top of completely getting unplugged from your routine and being in like that growth mindset.
Yes.
Me personally, I started doing breath work. I think the method I'm using is 4, 7, and 8. I don't know if that's the best one since you're a yoga instructor and a meditation teacher. Perfect question to ask, right? What is like the best form of breath work to start to kind of, calm down that fight or flight response that we all have, that we feel anxious, especially in a time of crisis or anything that people are going through?
Yeah, good question. That's so cool that you've gotten into it too. I feel like breathwork has been so transformative for me, and it's a really powerful tool. And I think again, it's kind of, like asking when's the best time to meditate. I think there's so many different styles of breathing and breath techniques that I think it's kind of whatever speaks to you and what you feel like you're benefiting from. So, I think, for example, the style that I teach, I love to teach, but I don't always do that exact style when I practice on my own. It just kind of depends. Intuitively, I really like listen to myself, and sometimes, more certain styles of breath work are more powerful than others, and it really like jump starts your system. So you might not want it every week. You might want it once a month or every other week. So I think daily, it's just nice to connect with the breath. I read a book that you might really like called Just Breathe. Can't think of the author right now, but he has a really cool background in breath in a variety of ways. Like he went to India, he was scuba, he also worked in a hospital. So just really, he provides a lot of background about the power of breath. And I think for me, one thing that I really took away from reading that book was just being observant of your breath. And so like really noticing, for example, how are you breathing while you're eating, before you're eating, if you're in traffic, and just really taking note of that. And that really shifted a lot for me, just having that awareness.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Matt and I wrote a blog post about different breathing styles. And
Oh,
I
cool.
we did a little bit of research, but for me, the main thing that I probably got from doing like the research is basically like compare like your normal breath when you're not paying attention to it to like a full deep breath. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
dramatic difference. Like
So
it's almost like your guppy breathing, like our arts patients do. Like it's not like when do we have time to take like a full deep breath? So if anyone's under any kind of stress, if you're in a stressful situation, if you're in like the Pyxis and you have a stressful patient, just take like 3 or 4 deep breaths, and like you feel so much better. Like you have more oxygen in your brain, you have more oxygen in your
yeah.
tissue, and it does such a big difference like throughout your day in your body.
Oh my gosh, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful shift. And I think even working with patients, I really started using breath too. I was working as a postpartum nurse, and for example, having C-section patients, when you're getting them out of bed for the first time, they're in a lot of pain, and just having them first concentrate on taking, deep breaths before we even move at all, their pain level already shifted a ton. And that's just the power of breath. But like you said, I think so many of us, we're just like chest breathing or shallow breathing or holding our breath, and we don't even realize it. So taking those slow, full, deep breaths, even setting a timer and doing 30 seconds of, in for 5 seconds, out for 5 seconds, is enough to shift a lot.
Right. Like even when working out, like if you like learn how to control your breath when you're lifting, you could lift more weight and you lift with better
Yeah,
posture. Like your quality of lifts are better. And even when we have a patient on the vent, he's bucking the vent, he's trying to butt on a tube, you tell him, hey, just relax, breathe. And that just calms it down. You don't got to push the fentanyl. If you just ask the guy, hey, just
totally.
relax and breathe, that goes far away too.
So
You
powerful. So powerful.
you better have an order for pushing that fentanyl, Peter.
I do it. It's on standby, PRN.
Uh-huh. So I want to get into the question of how does somebody become self-aware? But before I get to that, I had an interesting little epiphany here when I was listening to you guys talk.
Mm-hmm.
We as nurses, and we could all relate, you know how like you said, consistency creates the habit, which creates the meditation, the process, and it's not when you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Look at us as nurses. We're continuously stimulated by X amount of tasks to the point where you're forgetting what you had to do, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that creates us to be anxious. So
Totally.
so nurses are creating. Our job is kind of creating anxiety within us, and I noticed that myself to the point
Yeah.
where when you get out of work, it's hard to concentrate. I don't know if you guys ever had that problem.
Mm-hmm. I was just talking about that actually yesterday. I was saying, I most of my career I've been a day shift nurse, but when I moved to San Francisco, I was an evening shift nurse, and they mainly do 8-hour shifts in the Bay Area, which is very different. But I would get home like close to midnight, and then I would just feel so wired. Like physically, I'd feel tired, but I would just feel like my mind was so active that I couldn't just go to bed right away. And I think that the mindfulness and meditation piece has really helped. And you kind of mentioned like we almost like create our own perfect storm of anxiety. And I think that it's so true. And for me, the meditation piece again had really shifted me on that, in the sense that I would just become more mindful of each task I was doing. And I know when I look back, even a year ago, it's like the morning starts and you're like checking on all your patients, doing like the first assessment of the day, and sometimes you're just so busy you don't fully like engage with the patient. But when I really shifted and was more aware of it, I just would take my time asking questions to the patient, really listening. And it didn't matter if it took me longer to complete the whole assessment, because they felt also so much more listened to and seen and heard, that later I feel like the rest of the day would be like smooth sailing, because I took extra time in the morning and really slowed down. And then throughout the day, you know, if I'm doing one task, finish that task, and then, you know, try to move on to the next. Of course, you can't always do that, but when you can, for me, it really helped.
Yeah, if like for all the nurses out there, like if you develop a good like a structure at work, like if you plan out your shift, that goes a long way, because I basically plan out my shift. So technically I work till 7, but I'm done with everything by 4 a.m. You know, and I don't titrate any kind of drips after 5. Like I don't mess with them. I make sure everything is done early, and because that way, if you get behind, you at least have those 2 hours to catch up on things. Maybe I guess type A. And then you brought up something where after work you're still kind of more like mentally amped up. Yeah, I feel the same way after work, just because like it feels good to finally be out of work and finally see some light, some sunlight, because as working nights, like the sun is a rare commodity sometimes. So that's why I like going to the gym. And then the pre-workout definitely that doesn't always help, but I take my time before bed just to kind of wind down, to kind of breathe a little bit, just sit down and just relax and kind of ground myself and kind of just prep myself for bed.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think the transition piece is really important, and something that I really was tapping into a lot more in San Francisco too, even before work and then leaving the hospital. So I would get to work early, sit in my car, kind of have like a mindfulness moment of what intentions did I want to take to work, what, you know, what were kind of, you know, like compassion or whatever it was, and then go to work. And then I would come back to my car and kind of also like think about the day, clear it out, and then leave the parking garage. So I would kind of have that like moment of separation before, you know, leaving and going back home or back into the, you know, quote unquote, the real world.
Yeah, that's really good. And I feel like a lot of nurses have to realize that nursing is a 24-hour job. So if you don't complete everything, that's completely okay. And you got to leave that kind of baggage there. Like don't bring that stress and anxiety back home, because nursing is full of anxiety, full of stress, full of fear. And if you bring that home, let's say you got angry at a patient during a shift, like you got to be able to step past that, because then you're bringing that anger home, and you might, you know, get into arguing with like a significant other. You might, you know, get an argument with somebody else, and you just have to leave that. Like it's you got to be able to separate like work from like playtime, I guess, or your home time. Otherwise,
Yes,
it's just otherwise then you're getting anxious before work. You're getting anxious the 2 days prior, and all you think about is work, and that's just going to contribute to more burnout.
And I think part of it too, like, yeah, I think you made a lot of really good points. I think part of it too is also learning the things like we had mentioned that do charge you up or that do kind of restore you. And I always like to say self-care is like a battery too. It's like on your phone. You're not gonna, most of us don't let our phone get down to 0%. We're constantly charging it. You know, even if you see 70, you're like, ooh, gotta charge my phone. And self-care should be the same way. Like we shouldn't be going all the way to empty and then like, oh, okay, tomorrow I'm going to get I'm going to get a this, that, you know, and then try to like boost it all in one day. Again, it's back to consistency, which I really think is like the key to most things. And just really, you know, banking that and saving it. And even at work, I really had learned strategies to, you know, I mentioned before, I'm introverted by nature, but I think everyone in the hospital gets overstimulated with just sounds, noise, people, energy. And so sometimes for me, like the only place I could have a moment was like the bathroom. So I would just like go in the bathroom and like have a close my eyes mini meditation for like a minute, you know, and that would recharge me. Or another one at work is I always would bring my lunch, and sometimes I would just go outside on my lunch break. Even if I could only be outside for 10 minutes, that was enough to like reset, get fresh air, maybe a little bit of sun on my face. And it just kind of like breaks that too, and gives you like a little boost.
And a perfect clinical example of like what we're even experiencing is like even alarm fatigue. Like we as nurses hear that freaking sound so much that it literally filters into just us doing whatever we're doing. And then somebody taps you on the shoulder like, hey, your patient is desatting. I'm like, oh shit. It's not like we're bad nurses. We just get fatigued to that constant stimuli that's just completely exhausting us. And it takes a lot of self-awareness to realize this, right? Just like you say, routines. Hey, am I being consistent every day? It takes self-awareness. How do you build that self-awareness? Like, what is your point of view on it? Because no one knows that $1 million question, because then we could teach everybody self-awareness. And how do you teach that key? That it unlocks the key, to be honest. It creates so much opportunity for you. And people start realizing, you know, that I'm not a victim. And hey, 50%, it could be genetic, but that 50% is all interchangeable just like
Mhm.
epigenetics, right? So how do we teach self-awareness to somebody?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think self-awareness really is a huge key, because once you're self-aware, that's when you can start making changes. And so, I think again, it kind of goes back for me to the meditation piece, and more than anything, just like stillness. It kind of is really everything. I think in today's world, whether you work in the hospital or just, outside, there is so much stimulation and noise and distraction. And so to truly have that downtime to like let your body go into a calm state versus a chaotic state, and really just observing and taking note. And it could start asking yourself certain questions about the day. You can kind of look back over your day, and were there certain things that made you mad, and just being aware of the emotions you felt, and know that emotions and feelings are just kind of passing through, but often we get triggered. And so as you develop your self-awareness, you start understanding what are the things that trigger you too. And being in a hospital, it is a place that's easy to get triggered because the stress level is high. You're interacting with so many different patients. There might be patients that remind you of a family member or a friend, or you might not even be able to pinpoint how they're triggering you until you kind of later take a step away and really like think about it.
I have a pretty interesting question for you.
Yeah.
So you're a nurse that turned entrepreneur. So what kind of advice would you give to a nurse that loves her job, that went into nursing like as a love and a passion for it, and now is trying to like figure something else out, like has found another passion? Like how would she or he start to kind of build on that?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. I think for me, it was just kind of like organically kind of came about. And I think it's just a matter of actually listening to those things that are interesting to you. Because I think, again, back to kind of like society's programming and, the things like you should be doing versus what you actually want to be doing, or what is kind of your true calling. And I think as we evolve and get to know ourselves more, we're constantly changing. And I think it's just accepting that as part of life. And no matter what direction I go in, being a nurse is always a part of me, whether it's like in a hospital, teaching, writing a book, teaching yoga, meditation. I think I don't know, it's just something that helps me grow in a different way and give me a different perspective that I think I'm so grateful for.
And that's what's kind of like the badass part of being a nurse, right? Is that we have
So
those 3 days, and those other 4 days, unless you're picking up a shift, you could follow whatever your heart desires. Just like us,
yes,
we're both off and we're having a podcast session with somebody, and we're genuinely enjoying it.
yes, exactly.
Do you have any questions for us before we wrap up?
Ooh,
We are
yeah,
switching the tables here.
I know. It's like, yes. What mindfulness things do you guys like to do, or what helps you guys kind of de-stress and balance your self-care?
So definitely, just like you mentioned, meditation, going on walks. I've noticed that writing things down, writing my routine down, and sometimes like planning my day the night before.
Mm-hmm.
That is a form of like mindfulness for me, because I wake up in the morning and I feel structured. And because
Mm-hmm.
I feel structured in that kind of way, I'm able to kind of have more ease throughout my whole day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like type A where like, oh my God, I'm not getting this task done. I
Right.
always try to overachieve. So I'll do more than I can. And then I'll just check mark whatever I did, and I'm happy with it. Also, I've noticed jiu-jitsu was one of those things, just completely grounded me. I walked out of there completely fresh. It's like Matt was talking differently to himself after a jiu-jitsu session. It's really, really weird the way it grounded me. Unfortunately, I haven't done it for a couple of weeks, and it drives me crazy. And just like everybody else, our routines are out of whack. And I
Mm-hmm.
hope to get back into that soon. So that was working for me.
Yeah, it sounds like you're pretty tapped into what helps you.
Yeah, beautiful, Matthew. So like for me, mindfulness, like when I see mindfulness, somebody asks what like mindfulness means to me, it basically means like full of mind. So just like being with yourself, being like with your mind, because I'm for the most part fairly introverted as well. So like the best, like I said before, the way I kind of let go of my stress, like my anxiety, or if a nurse gave me some lip changes shift or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I bring that to the gym. Gym is like the time where I'm alone. Not so much now because I work out with a few friends because of the whole
Mm-hmm.
quarantine situation going on. But before, the gym was like my grounding place. Like I took out my anger on the weights. I took out my frustration out on the weights, and just that was kind of the setup for my whole day. Anything that I was battling, I would have time to think through it. Just because it was just me alone at the gym. Like I would think about my day between sets, and then during my sets, I would get my anger out and frustrations. And also, I do a lot of like stretching. I do a lot of yoga. I do the whole incense while I stretch, and that kind of brings me back to myself, because sometimes I get caught up in other people's, I don't want to say business, but like being a nurse, like Matt said before, we deal with people 24/7. It's either, you work with people, you're calling a physician for orders. He's a person that you see your friends, and you don't really have enough time for yourself, and you kind of devote your time for others. And like yoga and just stretching kind of devotes that time for me, where I could think through things more clearly, and just without anyone's other opinions. Because sometimes, you say an idea and then someone throws their opinion on it, and then you're just like, yeah, I agree with that. But then when you really think about it, you really don't agree with it, or you don't really see the same way they do. You just said you did it because it was the easiest thing to do at that situation. So mindfulness for me is basically just like kind of being in your own head and just understanding yourself.
Yeah, it's such a huge piece of, I think, life. It definitely helps in every avenue, especially in the hospital, where, like you said, we're constantly around noise, people, stimulation, and even in one day, how many people we interact with in a hospital. It's a lot.
I like how all three of us kind of said, like, this is what we used to do. So as if like Earth has changed, and it literally has, right? So
it really has. Yeah.
It's like we're letting go of the past. And just like you mentioned, hey, Earth will never be the same. There's a transition happening. Like, do you think it's like, I've read that supposedly we're entering like the age of Aquarius. We're leaving the other age astronomically. So do you think that's what's happening? Is it a conscious shift, or is it because of Corona? Or do you think collectively, like, now I'm thinking about it, what if we have that hive mindset, right? And we're all kind of like tuned in together. So I wonder if we're consciously going to become more self-aware after this event, just random thoughts.
So. I hope so. I hope that, my positive piece is, that it is a time and an opportunity for us to really go deep, and really, everybody is energy. And like you mentioned earlier, when it's really tense at work, for example, you can feel that tension. And, there's also, on the positive, heart coherence, for example. So if you're with someone you love, or, a really good friend, or someone you feel really close to, your heart waves actually sync up, and that's energy too. So I think it's, I think the positive, one thing that I'm really taking away is, even though we're all sheltering in place, and it's kind of, like an interesting time, and people are feeling antsy and kind of cooped up, I think the piece that I was really taking away is like, wow, how powerful are we when we really want to get something done collectively? We can make that happen. So imagine if all that energy was channeled in a really positive way, if we had one goal in mind and we really went for it. I think that's really powerful, and just allowing us this time to strip away so much of kind of, normal, I guess now what is normal, but, normal life, and just really seeing what are the things that are important.
And we also have to realize, like, do we want that normal life again, guys? Like, let's just realize how unhappy you were, and this is that time to be like, maybe I hated my job, or maybe this didn't work out. So just strip away all those mental shackles, all those, like, that emotional pain body that you carried with yourself, and just have that reset. And me and Peter mentioned it even on the COVID episode, man, this is such a time to just reset completely as a society, and yourself. Like, geez, like this is a time in history where everybody has that chance, and I don't think it'll ever happen again.
No, I know. It's so wild. I mean, I was thinking, I have one of my really good friends. She's my oldest friend. I've known her since I was 7. So kind of like you guys, right? And she has 3 kids under 5, like 5 and under. And so, she's doing homeschooling and all this. And I was just thinking, wow, I can't imagine being like a student where there's just no school, especially in high school, where so much is about your friends and socializing, and you're just totally without that.
Yeah, if this would have happened when me and Matt were younger, we'd probably be causing havoc right now. Thank God it didn't happen to us.
What would you guys be doing?
Yeah. I don't even want to say it.
Look what you brought up now. Go ahead.
It's like, I really want to know.
No, that's okay. We'll save that for another episode.
You were
I mean,
meditating, right? Would have been.
Exactly. I could have said it better myself. Thank
I
you.
mean, it depends. If it was Halloween, I'd probably do my typical. When I was younger, I did some egg bombing. I don't know if you ever partook in that. But yeah, I don't want to look like
Peter's
a bad
staying silent. He's like,
when Peter's smirking, man, he's thinking things that you don't want to know.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know the introverted mind.
Oh my God. You guys are ridiculous.
Tasha, has been an amazing experience. Anything you want to wrap up? Maybe one piece of advice to give anybody that's on their journey right now.
Yeah, oh gosh, there's so many, but I think especially now given these times, just really use the time to go within and every day, set some time aside just for yourself, because even, being home, it can get quote unquote busy. And so I think just really making sure you don't get caught up in, just all the cooking and the house stuff that, maybe people aren't used to doing, just really setting aside time for yourself on the daily and just getting to know yourself deeper.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Tasha. If you guys want to follow Tasha, she's got the Nurtured Nurse Instagram, and she also has a website. It's called thenurturednurse.co. Do you also have a personal Instagram?
Yeah, it's Llamo Tash, which is in Spanish. Basically, my name is Tash, so it's LLAMOTASH.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tasha. Hope you have an amazing day.
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much.
Namaste.
Namaste.